Hello folks, Alex here. This is Alex Unabridged, and today it's time for my June wrap-up. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, just into July now, so we'll have a little look back at the month that was June, and Pride Month it was. So all of my reading for June was LGBTQIA+ focused. My pile of possibilities, if you saw that video, my TBR and pile of possibilities for June, turned out to be a little ambitious, as per usual with me. Hence why I do piles of possibilities and not TBRs. I didn't get through anywhere near as much as I would have liked to have got through, but that's for good reasons, which I'll come to in a bit. But LGBTQIA+ books and authors are for all months and not just for Pride Month, so I will make sure that I keep reading all of the books by all of the wonderful queer authors that have come to my attention, especially since doing BookTube. I've found a hell of a lot more queer authors that I want to read. So I will keep going with that throughout the rest of the year and beyond. So, what have I read? First of all, I did my adventures in genre stuff. June was for joy, which meant LGBT plus romance. I will have a separate video coming soon, basically as soon as I've had a chance to edit it. But it's been a busy work week this week. But I read one book for each of the L, the G, the B and the T. So I read One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston for the L, Heartstopper Volume 1 for the G, Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert for the B, and Felix Ever After by Kaysen Calendar for the T. A very mixed bag, really, of that. I have got ratings that go from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 in those, but you'll have to wait and tune in to the Adventures in Genre wrap-up to find out which one gets which rating. So, on to the other stuff that I read. So, first up was Cemetary Boys by Aiden Thomas. So, kind of sticking with the romance theme. Turned out I've got a few romances this month. But yeah, this one is a YA novel. It follows the story of Yadriel, who is a trans boy determined to prove his abilities as a brujo, a traditional Latinx witch. He accidentally summons the spirit of Julian, a classmate who recently died, and they form an unexpected alliance to unravel the mysteries surrounding Julian's death. They navigate the magical underworld of the Cemetary, and Yadriel and Julian uncover dangerous secrets and confront their own fears while discovering the power of love, friendship and acceptance. To give you a succinct little summary, I really liked this. This is a 4 out of 5. It's very heartfelt the way that it's told, and it's quite enchanting. It's a lovely little sort of fantasy story. It really beautifully explores the themes of identity, of family, of gender. It approaches them very honestly, and it was quite relatable, despite the fact that, we're talking about a teenager. But there's still a lot of stuff that I can relate to. The experiences kind of portrayed in this to do with family and school, things like that. Acceptance or not, that kind of thing. It was very sensitively and warmly done. Yadriel's a really sweet character, actually, a really lovely character. Very, very likeable. And Julian, who, despite being a bit of a he's a bit of a lad, really, in a lot of ways. He's still very likeable. He's very much the opposite to Yadriel. He's kind of all out there and loud and, you know, quite brash in some ways. But he's still an extremely likeable character. You know, it's all about, you know, kind of not judging people before you've got to know them and their situation and things like that. So there's a lot of really good positive themes and ideas as well for a YA novel, I think. And there's, you know, kind of themes of bravery and self-sacrifice, things like that as well, which again were handled really well. Yeah, I was really impressed with this. This was a really quick read, really easy read, but a really good story, and just a really interesting story actually in terms of the Latinx kind of influence in terms of the, as I say, the kind of the magic and religion and all that kind of stuff that comes in. I think Aiden Thomas did a really good job with creating a very a grounded but also kind of fantastical world. So yes, very much recommend this one. Okay, next up, I have Heart Haunt Havoc by Freydis Moon. This was an ebook. This follows Colin Hart, who is a transgender exorcist, as he finds himself challenged by a haunted house in Gideon, Colorado. He's kept awake by the ghosts and demons of the house, as well as its secretive, handsome, non-binary owner, Bishop Martinez. This is sort of a mystery as well as a haunted house story, but it's also a romance. So yeah, another romance. I gave this 3.5 out of 5. 3 felt too low, but 4 tends to be for stuff where generally I think, like, yeah, it was great and I'd probably read it again. This was good, this was decent, definitely, but I wouldn't necessarily reread it. The trans and non-binary characters were handled very well. The sex scenes were very well done, actually, in terms of the sort of language and that kind of thing, you know, to do with sort of elements of physicality for two trans non-binary or non-binary characters. It was atmospheric. It was intriguing what was going on in this house and how it all linked into to Bishop. Negatives on this one, slight downsides. It felt a little too serious in tone sometimes, a little too earnest maybe, or trying to be a bit too serious, a bit too mysterious, when the story didn't have necessarily enough oomph to that and to warrant that. And also I think the writing was just I think it was just it felt like it was trying a little too hard sometimes to be kind of poetic, but it wasn't bad by any means. It just, as I say, I think it's, I don't know whether this is Freydis Moon's first book, but it was, as I say, it was decent. And it certainly kept my attention. It's very short. It's only a sort of 100, and I think it's like 160 pages or something like that. It's really not a long story. And it kept my attention throughout. But yeah, it just, the writing wasn't the best, but it wasn't bad by any means. So yeah, and I found, another romance that I actually quite enjoyed, and really, really good to see two characters, one trans, one non-binary, and sort of how a writer negotiates that and, kind of writes about it very honestly. Yeah, worked really well, that. Next up, I read LumberJanes Volume 2, the comic, by ND Stevenson, Shannon Waters, Grace Ellis and Brooke Allen. This picked up basically where the first one left off, really. It's more adventures with this group of girls at a summer camp, more magical thrills and spills and that kind of thing. It's got friendship right at its core, at its heart. There's a lot of whimsy, there's a lot of silliness, quirkiness. The art style is extremely energetic, dynamic. I really like LumberJanes. I'm going to keep going with this series definitely because it's a really good, it's a quick read, but it's got stuff to say, and it's got stuff to say that's important, I think, for a younger audience as well. I'm definitely going to keep going with LumberJanes. There's plenty in that series for me to get through, and a lot of them are still included in Kindle Unlimited, so I can certainly get quite a bit further into the series before I have to start spending any extra pennies. But yes, it's just great silly fun, and that one is a 4 out of 5. So yeah, if you haven't read LumberJanes, thoroughly recommend it. Next up, we have The Forsaken Boy by Tradup. Some of you will already know that Troy is still, might be again in the future, a booktuber. He's certainly still active in the booktube community, in comment sections and watching people's videos and all that kind of stuff at the moment. And yes, he wrote a book. He's written a couple of books, but this is his novel, which follows a teenage boy, Brandon, who's been ostracised and tormented by others for his entire life, but he has a fateful encounter with a werewolf and discovers a new power within him when he turns, and he sets out to change how people treat him once and for all. So woe betide anyone who gets in his path. This is a 4 out of 5. This is, fair play to Troy. This is a really good, entertaining, quite suspenseful, sort of fun read, again with stuff to say. Troy already knows what's coming because I've already spoken to him about this before I've done my review, my thoughts and stuff. But yeah, it's Brandon's a really interesting character. His arc's an interesting one. I liked him a lot in the first half of the book, and then didn't like him that much at all in the second. But despite not liking him, and despite having not being able to condone some of the things that he does, I did feel for him. Definitely, you do still feel for him as a character. But it's a good vision of how gaining power suddenly doesn't make everything better. I like the fact that Brandon doesn't panic about becoming a werewolf. He embraces it. It's that kind of that draw to power is interesting and somewhat relatable, even if the power's dark. I think that's kind of something I think a lot of us can kind of relate to as a concept. Not necessarily that we want to become werewolves, but some of us might. But yeah, just that kind of when you feel powerless, I think a draw to power, even if there's a dark edge to that, is kind of tempting. The other characters in the book are all well-rounded. There are a couple of characters which are very much side characters, but very well and sort of completely written. They really kind of jump off the page. There's a lot of humour in there as well, quite dry humour, and there's a real sense of place to it. There's a real sense of location. Troy uses the characters really well to kind of build this community of Talbot, which is the town that it's set in, the sort of rural community that it's set in. And yeah, the use of the characters all kind of work really well to establish that sense of community in place, as does the setting, the rural setting. That fitted really well for the tale. This kind of small town America, rural small town America. and it was well described, well realised. I could imagine it very clearly. I could kind of draw a map in my head of how it all linked up and stuff like that. It's kind of structurally it works well. For me, the pacing was a little bit on the slow side to start with. Not slow, but just for me, because I like things quite pacey. But it did not that it like lost my attention at any point. It's just like in the second half, I think it was more noticeable once I got into the second half of it, when it really ramped up the pace. And I kind of went, oh yeah, now come on. But yeah, it's structured well. I think the ending works really well, which obviously I won't give away. Dialogue's good. Let's say the characters are believable because of the dialogue, as well as the sort of, you know, bits about, you know, sort of what they're thinking, what they're feeling. There's some cheese in there. There's some corniness, if you like, but it's all intentional. And it works really well. As I say, it's quite there's a lot of darkness in here, but you need that kind of balance, I think. And yeah, the humour in it works really well. Troy doesn't try to reinvent the wheel, but does a really good job of making this an entertaining and somewhat thought-provoking read. So nice one, Troy. So yeah, 4 out of 5. If you haven't read it, thoroughly recommend it. And finally, on my have read, is GenderQueer, a memoir, the deluxe edition, by Maia Kobabe. I read this on digital on my iPad. This is a really powerful and honest exploration of Maia Kobabe's journey to understand and embrace their own gender identity. It's really beautiful in terms of how it's illustrated. It's full of personal anecdotes. Kobabe shares their experiences, celebrates sort of the freedom of self-discovery. There is so much in this that I could relate to. It was kind of ridiculous. In parts, this was an extremely difficult read for me, because the author's talking about things that were, really are, kind of almost like my memories as much as their memories. They're also kind of, the same memories in a lot of ways. Some of the kind of anecdotes or occurrences, things like that, are so close to some experiences I've had. It was very close to the bone, and I did kind of find myself feeling quite emotional for a lot of it. Not negatively all the time. Some personally negative stuff, or personally sort of darker stuff, I should say, but also a lot of positive stuff as well. So yeah, certainly quite a few things to do with going through puberty as a girl, essentially. That's all. I can identify with a lot of what Kobabe says about that, and similarly, sort of things that you have to deal with as an adult, with a certain type of body and the kind of trauma that comes with that. That sort of stuff really that made me, that was very difficult to read, very, very difficult to read. But it's important to see that sort of stuff on the page to know that you're not alone. And just, things like, I'll put this page up, about, joining a backstage crew on a musical. And I joined the backstage crew and fulfilled a stereotype by falling in love with theatre. It's like, yes, I've done that. And then made a career out of it for a bit. Stuff like that. And, just little things like in this panel. Sometimes I feel like my brain is a machine built by someone who lost the instruction manual. Yes, again, there's a lot, as I say, there's a hell of a lot in this that I could relate to. And it's just told so honestly, that I have a huge amount of respect for Maia Kobabe, and the fact that they put this intensely personal stuff out there, and that they did it in this particular form as well. I've come to really love the memoir in graphic novel form, having read Fine, a comic about gender by Rhea Ewing a little while ago. That was excellent as well. And even stuff like Luke Healy's Americana, which is very, very different, but it's, you know, it's a memoir essentially in graphic novel format. There's just something about that format that I think I absolutely love. So yes, anyway, yeah, GenderQueer, a difficult read, but a well worth a read, absolutely well worth a read, and I'd say well worth a read for anyone. This is a 5 out of 5, without a doubt. So those are all the things that I finished in June. So nowhere near as much as I would have liked to have got through. There are 2 things that I am still reading. One is Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Brite, which I have got further in this time than the last time I tried it, because I actually DNF'd it, and I am going to finish it this time. It's just, there's something very affecting about it for me. It's like it's not scary, or, you know, kind of, it's often mentioned as a disturbing book, and I wouldn't necessarily I'd call it disturbing, but there's a real kind of, almost, I don't know whether it's dread, or it's hard to explain what it is that I feel really. But there's definitely a darkness with it that I find, and it's very, very well written, but I'm having to do it in small chunks, shall we say. And I didn't start it until towards the end of the month, to be honest. I'm still onto that one. I will get that finished, but as I say, I'm just taking my time with that one. And the other one is Gender Euphoria, which I have read some of the pieces in this. Gender Euphoria by Laura Kate Dale and lots of other people, edited by Laura Kate Dale, who also has some stories in here. And this is exactly what you'd expect. It's tales of gender euphoria, the joys of, you know, kind of the joys of being trans, the joys of kind of feeling recognised, or, you know, kind of comfortable in yourself, things like that. This was like, I really needed this. This was really good. I really, really enjoyed what I've read of this so far. There are a lot of there are a lot of different stories in it. As I say, I've only read a few so far. Again, plenty of stuff for me to be able to relate to. Stuff on tattoos and transmasculine selfhood, and then one particular which I really liked, which was transition in lockdown, shaving and growth, and, you know, sort of stuff about the beard, the good old beard. And there's a lot in that I can relate to, and it's very well written as well. All of them are. They're all really well written pieces. And yeah, there's just kind of bits in this, like this passage at the end, towards the end. I feel like I've always wanted a beard before I ever had the language to describe myself, my gender. Sometimes I wonder if it's because I want another mask. I ask myself, do I want a beard because it's symbolic of masculinity? Do I want a beard because it's another thing to hide behind? And it's like, yeah, I can understand and relate to those kind of questions, things like that. And yeah, there were some pieces in here, like with GenderQueer actually as well, that deeply affecting, both this and GenderQueer. I found myself crying, but not like sobbing, just crying, just reading and kind of crying a bit. And it's like just that kind of, I think it's a release of emotion. like a slow release of emotion, and I don't cry very often or very easily. So obviously I needed that. So yeah, although some stuff is, it's difficult to read, it is kind of cathartic as well. So yeah, so as I say, I haven't finished this yet, but on the basis of what I've read so far, I would definitely recommend it. So that is all of my reading. Writing wise, this is why I've not got as much read this month as I'd hoped to, because reading both Gender Euphoria and GenderQueer, and thinking back to, like, I'd say Fine, a comic about gender that I read recently, particularly those that I've read this month, or last month rather, they really just kind of inspired me to kind of get going with some stuff on my own memoir pieces, which is kind of, it's kind of fictionalized memories of mine. It's, it's based on real memories, but I'm playing with them in terms of style, or kind of how I sort of think of them in terms of genre. So there'll be some fantastical stuff and things like that. There's, they are kind of autofiction. And yeah, certainly with reading, GenderQueer, there were quite a few bits in there that kind of sparked off memories that I'd kind of completely forgotten about, like, anecdotes, occurrences, things like that. And so I ended up just kind of going, no, I need to, like, write some of this down. So I had to basically use some of my reading time to get some of that writing done, which is why I've not got through as much. But I'm, there's no regrets on that, because I've been kind of wanting to kind of get back into writing a bit more. I'd not been quite so productive for like April and May. So yes, I'm back into that. And yeah, I already had some stuff done on these kind of autofiction memoir pieces. I already had kind of 4 pieces sort of reasonably well on, but I've come up with like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, nearly 20 more. And pretty much all of those have now got an outline to them, and they're all shorter pieces. It will go into a collection of short pieces. Some will be extremely short, like microfiction or almost poetry, and some will be slightly longer short stories. That's that's what I've been doing basically with my time. So I can't complain really. It's not that I've not read and not done anything else. Do you know what I mean? They're just sat there. I've just, I've had to devote some of that reading time to writing. I have also been tinkering with other short stories I've got on the go, my horror short stories, kind of tinkering around the edges. I need to probably knuckle down and get them finished and show them to somebody. And I've started filming a vlog actually for a zine that I'm making / writing. So this is where we get the crossover from the writing into the making, which is based on a dream. It's a very short story, flash fiction pretty much, based on a dream, because I have very vivid dreams. I have an extremely vivid sort of visual imagery generally, and my dreams are no different, and certainly my nightmares are extremely vivid. And so this was a nightmare, not just a dream. So yes, so that I've started a vlog that will document the process of me writing it and making it. So I will crack on with that and hopefully get that sorted soon. The only other thing that I've been making that's sort of booktube adjacent, which I'm part way through, which I've had part of it done for ages, and then the weather got really hot and sweaty and sticky, and I haven't been able to finish it because it's print work, and if I try and print when it's too hot, the ink dries on the plate before I can actually pull the print. So I've had to put it off until we've now got cooler weather, so I'm going to get this finished. But yeah, basically it's just me playing with lino cooks. I've not done any in a while, so that is the background for it, which is taken from that print block there. And then it's text-based, which is why I'm mentioning it, because it's booktube adjacent. And that is the plate, which is yet to be printed. It says, in case you can't read it, think for yourself, question authority. And that is a Timothy Leary quote, which I have pretty much lived by since I came across it back in my 20s. And this is, as I say, it's just for me to get a chance. It's a chance for me to get back into doing some print work, doing some carving, because I enjoy the carving. And yeah, so I will be finishing that off, printing that on top of the question mark background. That'll go on in black. And I will show you the finished article when it is done. That's just me tinkering about with a bit of stuff, because I've not done any lino cut in a long time, and I wanted to do something wordy because I like carving letters. So that is pretty much everything for my usual reading, listening, writing, making stuff. As I say, the Adventures in Genre wrap-up will come as soon as I have it edited. But thank you very much for watching today, folks. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider giving me a like and subscribing for more content coming very soon. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.